My name is Claire Whitman. I was 42 when my cheating husband smiled across a divorce courtroom and watched me sign away the company I had helped build for 12 years. And when his mother leaned down behind me and whispered, "Good girl. Now give my son what he deserves," I already knew she hadn't read the clause that would destroy them both. People always think revenge has to be loud. They imagine screaming, slamming doors, a dramatic speech in front of everyone who hurt you. But sometimes revenge is quiet. Sometimes it looks like a woman sitting perfectly still in a courtroom, signing her name with steady hands while the people who underestimated her celebrate too early. That was me. And the part that still makes me smile is this: I did give Daniel the company. I gave him every piece of it: the name, the equipment, the contracts, the bank accounts, the reputation, the pending disputes, the hidden debts, the unpaid vendors, the tax exposure, everything, because Daniel never understood the difference between owning something and surviving it. For 12 years, my husband was the face of Whitman and Rose Catering. He was handsome in that polished, expensive way that made people trust him before he earned it. He had a broad smile, a warm handshake, and the ability to make every bride's mother feel like her daughter's wedding was the most important event he had ever handled. He gave the speeches, he took the photos, he shook hands with hotel managers, he wore custom suits to tastings and told clients, "We treat every event like family." People loved him for it. But when the lights went off and the guests went home, I was the one who made sure the vendors were paid, the payroll cleared, the contracts were reconciled, the insurance stayed active, and the numbers actually matched the promises Daniel made in those beautiful rooms. I handled the spreadsheets. That was what Margaret called them. Spreadsheets. She said the word like it smelled bad. Margaret Whitman was my mother-in-law, but she behaved more like a board chair who had never been elected. She had opinions about everything: the menu, the office layout, my clothes, my parenting, my marriage, even the way I answered the phone. She believed Daniel was born for success and everyone else existed to polish the path in front of him, especially me. For years, she introduced me at events as Claire, Daniel's wife. She helps with the paperwork. Helps with the paperwork. Not operations manager, not bookkeeper, not the person who caught the payroll error that would have cost us $12,000, not the person who rebuilt our vendor payment system after Daniel promised 3 different clients the same kitchen crew on the same Saturday, not the person who spent 2 nights sleeping on the office couch after a freezer failed and we almost lost inventory for a 300-person fundraiser. Just Daniel's wife, the paperwork woman. At first I let it slide because I thought peace was worth more than credit. That was my first mistake. People who benefit from your silence eventually start calling it agreement. The affair began long before Daniel admitted it. I knew because his habits changed before his words did. He started guarding his phone, not dramatically, but carefully. He turned it face down during dinner. He took calls in the garage. He suddenly cared about cologne again. He bought new shirts and said they were for client meetings. Then there was Vanessa. Vanessa Cole was our sales director, 29 years old, glossy hair, perfect nails, a laugh that arrived a second too quickly after Daniel spoke. At first, I told myself not to be insecure. Then I watched her touch his arm at a tasting and leave her hand there long enough for him to notice I had seen it. Daniel didn't move away. That was the first public humiliation. Not loud. Not obvious enough for anyone else to call it cruel, but obvious enough for me. A month later, at a charity gala we catered downtown, Margaret stood beside Vanessa near the dessert display and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Some women have presence. They make a room brighter just by walking in." Vanessa smiled. Margaret looked at me. "Other women are better behind the scenes." I was holding a clipboard and checking final service timing. I remember staring down at the paper because if I looked up, everyone would see what that sentence did to me. Daniel heard it. He pretended he didn't. That night when we got home, I asked him if there was something going on. He sighed like I had inconvenienced him. "Claire, not everything is a courtroom." Funny choice of words looking back. I said, "I'm asking a simple question." He loosened his tie and said, "You always do this." "Do what?" "Make things heavy." That became his favorite accusation: heavy. If I asked why a charge didn't match a receipt, I was heavy. If I wanted him home for Emma's school presentation, I was heavy. If I noticed Vanessa texting him at midnight, I was heavy. It is amazing how quickly a guilty person can turn your awareness into your flaw. Our daughter Emma was 15 then. Smart, observant, quieter than most people realized. She loved sketching dresses in the margins of her notebooks and pretending she didn't care when Daniel missed things. But she did care. Children always notice the parent who keeps showing up and the parent who keeps explaining why he couldn't. One evening, Emma asked me, "Is Dad mad at us?" I was folding laundry at the kitchen table. I remember holding one of Daniel's shirts, half folded, unable to answer. "No, sweetheart," I said. "He's just distracted." She looked at me with the kind of sadness that makes a mother feel like she has failed at protecting the world. "He's always distracted now." That was the night I stopped making excuses for him in my own head, but I still wasn't ready for the divorce conversation. Daniel chose a Tuesday, the most ordinary day imaginable. He sat me down at our kitchen island like he was about to discuss a vendor contract. He wore the blue button-down I bought him for our 10th anniversary, the one he used to call his lucky shirt. "I've been unhappy for a long time," he said. His voice was calm, rehearsed. I didn't cry, not because I was strong in that moment, because shock makes your body efficient. It decides which parts of you can shut down temporarily so you can survive the sentence being handed to you. Then he said, "Vanessa understands me in ways you don't." There it was, the name, the proof, the confirmation of every small humiliation I had swallowed. Before I could respond, the back door opened. Margaret walked in without knocking. She had always done that, even after I asked her not to, even after Daniel promised he would talk to her, even after Emma started locking her bedroom door because her grandmother thought privacy was disrespect. Margaret set her purse on the counter and looked at me as if I were a spill she expected someone else to wipe up. "I told him this would happen," she said. "A man like Daniel needs admiration, Claire, not spreadsheets." I looked at Daniel. He looked away. That hurt more than the affair. Because betrayal is not only what someone does behind your back. Sometimes it is what they allow to happen right in front of your face. Margaret continued, "Let's not make this ugly. Daniel has a reputation. The company has a reputation. You should think about Emma." That was always the trick. When they wanted something from me, they used my daughter's name like a leash. I said, "What exactly do you want?" Daniel cleared his throat. "The company stays with me." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. "You mean the company I run?" Margaret tilted her head. "My son built that company. You just typed numbers." There are sentences that break your heart, and there are sentences that wake you up. That one woke me up, because the truth was the numbers had been wrong for months. At first, I thought Daniel had gotten careless. A hotel suite charged to the corporate card during a weekend with no events. A luxury spa receipt coded under vendor outreach. A necklace from a boutique downtown listed as client appreciation. Restaurant bills on nights when Daniel told me he was working late. Then I noticed the pattern. The charges were not random. They were being hidden, moved, relabeled, disguised. The first email I found was from Margaret to our office assistant, Nora. "Move the Palm Crest charges into hospitality. No one reads the line items." I stared at that sentence for a long time. No one reads the line items. That was Margaret's entire worldview. She believed charm covered consequences. She believed authority meant never being questioned. She believed I was too tired, too loyal, or too frightened to protect myself. After that email, I stopped assuming mistakes. I started documenting patterns, quietly. Every morning, I came into the office, made coffee, answered emails, smiled politely, and saved copies of everything. Vendor ledgers, credit card statements, payroll timing reports, expense classifications, deposit records, event contracts, invoices marked paid that had not actually cleared. I created a private backup folder and named it Recipes. Daniel never opened anything with a boring name. Nora noticed before anyone else did. She was 24, nervous, and smarter than she let on. One afternoon, she came into my office holding a stack of delivery confirmations. "Claire," she said softly, "Margaret told me to backdate these." I looked up. Did she say why? Nora swallowed. She said if I wanted to keep my job, I should stop asking questions. I closed the office door. Don't backdate anything, I said. Scan them. Send them to the regular vendor folder, then forward me the email where she told you. Nora looked terrified. Will I get in trouble? No, I said. Not with me. That was the first witness I didn't know I would need. 3 weeks after Daniel asked for the divorce, a letter arrived from the State Department of Revenue. Request for documentation related to expense classifications, payroll tax timing, and vendor disbursement records. Daniel tossed it onto my desk like it was a grocery list. Handle it, he said. I looked at the letter, then at him. You still want me handling the books? For now, he said, until everything is finalized. Margaret was in the doorway when he said it. She smiled over her reading glasses. You were useful when you were quiet, she said. Don't ruin that now. That line did not make me cry. It made me careful. That afternoon, I drove to meet my attorney, Lisa Moreno. Lisa had represented 2 women from Emma's school. I knew she was good because neither of them ever described her as aggressive. They described her as precise. That was what I needed. Precision. Her office was small, quiet, and smelled like paper and lemon tea. She listened while I explained the affair, the company, Margaret, and the sudden urgency Daniel had about getting everything signed. When she asked what I wanted, I gave her a list. I wanted the house equity divided fairly. I wanted Emma's college savings protected. I wanted no access to my late father's inheritance. I wanted Daniel's personal spending separated from marital expenses. And when we got to the company, I paused. Lisa waited. I said, if he wants it, he can have it. She looked up slowly. Claire, that business is valuable. No, I said. The name looks valuable. The truth underneath it is different. Then I slid the folder across her desk. It was thick. Printed emails, flagged credit card statements, a copy of the revenue letter, vendor notices, screenshots of Margaret's instructions, a list of questionable charges, and my draft schedule. Assets, liabilities, outstanding disputes, known claims, contingent exposure, indemnification. Lisa read for several minutes without speaking. That silence was different from Daniel's silence. Daniel used silence to punish. Lisa used it to think. Finally, she said, You made this? I balanced it, I said. She tapped one page with her pen. This language here, assumption of liabilities. You understand what this means? Yes. If they accept ownership with this attached, they accept the business as disclosed, not just the pretty parts. That's the point. Lisa leaned back and studied me. For the first time in months, someone looked at me like I was not fragile. She said, Then we are going to make sure they have every opportunity to read it. That became the plan. Not a trick. Not fraud. Not hiding. The opposite, disclosure. Everything in writing. Every schedule properly attached. Every page numbered. Every liability described. Every pending issue documented. If Daniel and his attorney chose not to take it seriously, that would not be my failure. That would be arrogance wearing a suit. Meanwhile, Daniel became crueler. Not in one big cinematic moment. In daily little cuts. He moved into the guest room but left Vanessa's perfume on his jacket. He stopped eating dinner with us but criticized the grocery bills. He told Emma, Your mother is emotional right now, whenever she asked why he was never home. He changed the password on the company's social media accounts and had Vanessa update the bio to say, Founded by Daniel Whitman. Founded. I saw it at 11 at night while sitting alone in bed. 12 years reduced to a sentence. The next morning, I asked him about it. He shrugged. Branding needs clarity. And I'm not clear? Margaret answered from the kitchen table where she was drinking my coffee from my mug. Claire, don't be petty. The public connects with Daniel. You know that. I said. The public also likes paid vendors and accurate tax filings. Her eyes sharpened. For half a second I saw fear. Then it disappeared under the usual smirk. You always were dramatic. That was another thing they did. They called facts drama when facts threatened them. The final humiliation before court happened at a tasting for a large anniversary event. I should not have been there. Lisa told me to limit contact. But one of our long-term clients, Mrs. Halpern, specifically requested me because she trusted my notes from her daughter's wedding years earlier. I went. Daniel arrived with Vanessa. Margaret came too, wearing pearls and a cream blazer as if she were attending a board meeting instead of meddling in a divorce. During the tasting, Mrs. Halpern asked me a question about staff timing. Before I could answer, Vanessa stepped in. "I can handle that." She could not. She gave an estimate that would have left us understaffed by 6 servers. I corrected it gently. Daniel's jaw tightened. After the client left, he pulled me into the side hallway. "You embarrassed Vanessa." I stared at him. "She was wrong. She's learning." "At a client's expense?" Margaret appeared behind him. "This is why Daniel needs someone supportive beside him," she said. "Not someone waiting to prove she's smarter." Then she looked me up and down. "You're not the face of anything, Claire. Stop trying to stand in the light." I went home and sat in my car for 20 minutes before going inside. Not because I was defeated, because I needed to let the anger settle into something useful. Anger is dangerous when it is hot, but when it cools, it becomes strategy. The hearing was set for a Thursday morning. I woke up before my alarm. The house was quiet. Emma was still asleep. For a moment, I stood in the hallway outside her room and listened to her breathing through the door the way I used to when she was little. I wanted to protect her from all of it, but I also wanted her to someday understand that peace bought with self-erasure is not peace. It is disappearance. I wore a navy blouse, simple earrings, and the necklace my father gave me after I got my first office job. Daniel used to joke that I dressed like someone who expected bad news. That morning, I dressed like someone prepared to deliver it. At the courthouse, Daniel arrived in a charcoal suit. Vanessa was in the hallway. She did not come into the courtroom, but she stood close enough to be seen. Close enough to make sure I knew she was waiting for my life to be cleared out of the way. Margaret walked beside Daniel like a queen mother entering a ceremony. When she saw me, she smiled. Not warmly, triumphantly. She leaned toward Daniel and said something that made him laugh. I looked away. Lisa touched my elbow. "Remember," she said quietly, "you don't have to perform pain for anyone today." That sentence helped me more than she probably knew. Inside the courtroom, everything felt smaller than I expected. The tables, the chairs, the distance between victory and disaster. The settlement packet was placed in front of us. Daniel barely glanced at it. His attorney, Mr. Bell, flipped through the first few pages with the bored confidence of a man who believed the important part was already settled. Claire transfers her ownership interest in Whitman and Rose Catering, LLC, to Daniel Whitman. That was the headline. That was all Daniel cared about. The pages underneath were not glamorous. Schedule C, assumption of liabilities. Schedule D, disclosed vendor disputes. Schedule E, pending tax and regulatory inquiries. Schedule F, indemnification for pre-existing company obligations and management-directed expense misclassification. Line items, the kind Margaret said no one read. As I picked up the pen, Margaret stepped closer behind me. She was not supposed to be that close, but people like Margaret often confuse boundaries with suggestions. Her perfume reached me before her voice did. "Sign it, Claire," she murmured. "You were useful when you were quiet. Don't ruin that now." I turned slightly. For years, I had wanted Margaret to like me. Then I wanted her to respect me. Then I wanted her to leave me alone. That morning, I wanted nothing from her. That was freedom before the papers were even signed. I said, softly enough that only she heard, "You should have read the line items." Her smile flickered. Then I signed. One page, then another, then another. Steady, calm, exact. Daniel signed after me with a flourish, like he was autographing a success story. Margaret squeezed his shoulder. Then the judge began reviewing the final documents. She flipped through the packet, once, twice. Then she stopped. "Counsel," the judge said, looking toward Daniel's attorney. "To confirm, your client has reviewed all attached schedules, including Schedule C regarding assumption of liabilities and Schedule F regarding indemnification for pre-existing claims, tax obligations, vendor disputes, and management-directed expense misclassification." The room changed, not loudly, but completely. Daniel's smile weakened. Mr. Bell looked down at the packet again. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Lisa remained perfectly still. The judge looked at Daniel. Mr. Whitman, do you understand that upon transfer, you assume sole responsibility for the company's current and contingent liabilities as disclosed in these attachments? Daniel hesitated, just long enough. Not long enough to save himself. Yes, Your Honor, he said. The judge continued. And you acknowledge that these schedules were provided in advance and incorporated into the settlement agreement? Mr. Bell cleared his throat. Yes, Your Honor. Lisa said nothing. She did not need to. The judge signed. That was it. No shouting, no dramatic reveal. No one fainted. No one confessed. Just ink. The sound of a pen moving across paper. The quietest explosion I had ever heard. Outside the courtroom, Margaret caught up to me. What did you do? She hissed. I looked at her. I gave him what he asked for. Daniel stormed over, holding the packet now, actually reading for the first time. What is this? He demanded. Lisa stepped between us. It is the agreement your counsel reviewed and your client signed. Daniel ignored her and looked at me. You knew. Yes, I said. You set me up. No, I replied. I documented what was already there. Margaret's face flushed. You vindictive little accountant. I almost smiled. After 12 years, she had finally promoted me from paperwork. 2 days later, Daniel called me 12 times. I let every call go to voicemail. By the third message, his voice had changed. Claire, call me back. By the fifth, he was angry. Lisa says this liability language is enforceable. You knew about these issues before the transfer? By the 8th, he sounded scared. The bank froze the business line pending review. By the 10th, he was shouting. The state wants supporting records. There are vendor claims. What the hell did you do? I called him back that evening, not because he deserved it, because I wanted him to hear my calm. I gave you the company, I said. You buried me in it. No, Daniel. You buried yourself. I just stopped standing on top. There was silence. Then Margaret took the phone. You sneaky little... You told me no one reads the line items, I said. That wasn't my mistake. She hung up. Over the next month, everything they thought they had won began to collapse. The Department of Revenue followed up. The unpaid vendors demanded payment. The bank restricted the credit line. A venue partner suspended future bookings after a reconciliation dispute surfaced. Payroll questions opened the door to a deeper review. And because everything had been disclosed, preserved, and transferred through the settlement, Daniel could not claim surprise without admitting he had signed documents he had not read. Margaret's emails became especially useful. Move the Palmcrest charges into hospitality. Backdate the delivery confirmations. Do not put Daniel's name on that reimbursement. No one reads the line items. It turns out those sentences sound different when read by professionals instead of family members trained to obey her tone. Nora resigned 2 weeks after the hearing. Before she left, she sent Lisa a final statement confirming what Margaret had instructed her to do. She wrote one sentence I never forgot. Claire was the only person in that office who told me not to lie. I cried when I read that. Not because I was sad, because sometimes after years of being called difficult, one honest sentence can feel like being handed your own name back. Daniel tried to save the company. For a while. He posted smiling photos with Vanessa and wrote captions about new beginnings. He offered discounts. He called old clients. He blamed the divorce. But people talk. Vendors talk faster. By the end of the second month, 2 chefs had left, 3 clients had canceled, and 1 long-term hotel partner refused to renew their preferred vendor agreement. The company Daniel wanted so badly became exactly what he deserved. A beautiful name attached to a mess he could not charm his way out of. Then he called me again. This time, he did not yell. "Help me fix it," he said. I was standing in my kitchen when he said that. The same kitchen where he had told me Vanessa understood him. The same kitchen where Margaret had said he needed admiration, not spreadsheets. The same kitchen where I had folded laundry and lied to Emma that her father was just distracted. I looked around and realized the room felt peaceful without him. "Why would I do that?" I asked. "Because you know the business." I almost laughed. It was the first honest thing he had said about me in years. I knew the business, I said. Now you own it. He tried another angle. You can't want Emma to see this happen. That almost worked. Almost. But then I remembered every school event he missed, every dinner he skipped, every time he let Margaret speak over me in my own home, every time Emma watched me shrink so he could feel larger. Emma is seeing the truth, I said. For once, I'm not hiding it for you. He hung up. 3 months after the hearing, Whitman and Rose Catering was functionally finished. Daniel sold equipment below value. Vanessa left before the last invoice dispute was settled. Margaret told people she had been misled by bad accounting, which was funny, considering she had spent 12 years telling everyone I was barely accounting at all. But the strangest thing happened after the company began falling apart. People started calling me, not Daniel, me. Mrs. Halpern called first. I heard you're independent now, she said. Are you taking clients? Then a hotel manager, then a bakery owner, then 2 former vendors who needed help cleaning up their own systems. Quiet work, honest work. The kind of work no one puts on a magazine cover but every functioning business depends on. I rented a small office above a florist. The first thing I bought was a peace lily. Margaret hated peace lilies. She said they looked like funeral flowers. Maybe that was why I liked it. Emma helped me carry boxes into the office on a Saturday morning. She placed my old calculator on the desk, then looked around and said, "It feels like yours." I swallowed hard. "It is." She smiled. "Good." That one word healed something in me that no court order could have touched. 6 months after the divorce, I received a message from a vendor I had worked with for years. "Heard you're on your own now? Good. You were the only reason we trusted that company." I read it 3 times. For years, Daniel believed he was the business because he was the visible one. Margaret believed power belonged to the loudest person in the room. They were both wrong. Power is not always loud. Sometimes power is the person who keeps records, the person who remembers dates, the person who reads the attachments, the person who refuses to carry someone else's consequences one day longer. So yes, I signed away the company in court. I signed it while my cheating husband smiled. I signed it while my mother-in-law laughed. I signed it while everyone in that room thought I was finally accepting defeat. But I was not surrendering. I was returning every hidden debt, every buried lie, and every dirty line item to the people who created them. That was the day I stopped being useful. That was the day I stopped being quiet. And that was the day I finally became free.